Greetings and salutations. This is Imperator Vespasian,
and it's just sidekick me.
Yeah, it's just a sidekick him. That's his actual name, him. We couldn't actually think of a name when he was born, and we said, "Oh, it's him, isn't it?" So there you go. That's what we called him. So what I'm bringing you today is my Second World War bolt action Chinese. Now I did do some videos on these last year. But they didn't look like this. I had them in slightly darker uniforms. I decided to sort of go over them and spruce them up a bit. Just to give you an idea, that is how the Chinese looked before. If I can zoom in on it. This camera doesn't like zooming. They were in the much darker green uniform because it was raining a lot, and so I thought dark green would look cool. I decided to spruce them up a bit, and I've made the uniform slightly lighter green, more like it would be in normal weather, and I've basically redone the bases. If you aren't blind, you can see that the bases are now based on what are they based on? Roads and pavements. Yes, just
cobblestone.
Cobblestone and pavements. Basic reason is a lot of our games are now going to be based around fighting cities. Yeah, fighting the main battles in China. When you do World War II Japanese, people always do them in jungle because, hey, Japanese always fought in jungle, didn't they? Well, yes, if you're American. However, much of the time the Chinese were actually fighting in built-up urban areas, although most of that part of the war is ignored by the West because we don't live in China. And our experience of the Second World War in China is slightly different from the Japanese experience. So these guys are for fighting in places like Nanking, Shanghai, Chengda, all the major battles that they fought in China, and so I've done them up in these bases. Basically, I'm working towards building a lot of Chinese scenery. I'm going to do a lot in 28mm, and I'm going to do some in 15mm as well. For reasons which you will find out eventually when I get round to it. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, just to run over the uniforms, they have the standard green uniform of the Nationalist troops on. The uniforms are supplied by Germany, so I'm using German figures for the Chinese. They use German helmets. Some of the southern Chinese troops used British equipment, so they would have been in the Tommy hat. These guys, though, are in the German uniform because they're mostly northern Chinese forces. Chiang Kai-shek's troops were mainly in German equipment. They also carried a lot of German weapons, so yeah, pretty much they're your standard blitzkrieg in German infantry, early war Germans, but painted up in Chinese colours. They're painted more or less the same. The equipment's basically the same as the Germans. There's a few spatterings of the odd Japanese pistol and things because of stuff they've captured, and there's a few Mosin Nagant rifles. I think that's a Mosin because they also use Russian equipment. It was pretty much a hodgepodge of stuff.
Picked up any weapon, used it.
Yeah, and a lot of it left over from the warlord period of China when a lot of local warlords would gather large amounts of things, even tanks, and then they were amalgamated into the Nationalist Army. So you had quite a hodgepodge of equipment and stuff going on. The helmet is the same colour as the German helmet, of dark blue grey colour. Ideal for camouflage in shaded areas and buildings, built up areas, because it just adds to camouflage. It's designed to make you not notice as quickly as you would normally notice. The uniform is a standard field green, which is sort of a lighter green than the British khaki. Like the World War I British khaki. It was slightly lighter than that, but it wasn't quite olive.
We're in like that kind of colour, World War I. The background kind of colour.
Yeah, khaki was, well, Depends really what year and what factory it came from, but generally British khaki tended to be slightly different from this. But they're wearing leather puttees, which are actually painted over the boots. A lot of the Blitzkrieging Germans have boots on, knee boots. So I painted the tops of the knee boots in puttees, so it was like a leather guard around the lower leg. It stops moisture and bugs get into your legs, and it stops you having the sort of trouble that the British had. When the British went out to fight in Malaya, they stupidly went wearing shorts because the idiots who ran the British Army said, "Hey, it's hot over there. If I was there, I'd wear shorts. That's a jolly good idea, isn't it?"
I'm not thinking about any of the diseases or cuts you could get. It's just, no.
Yeah, so by the time the British surrendered to the Japanese, over half the entire British Army was actually embedded in malaria. So, yeah, fine, we may have outnumbered the Japanese, and we may have outgunned the Japanese, but most of our men were rather unwell.
And dying.
And dying in large numbers because of disease, not because of contact with the enemy. This is something the Chinese knew all about because they lived there already. And so they made sure that their equipment was fit for purpose. And being able to source equipment is quite good for the Chinese because they had a large amount of money, which is something that is often forgotten. The Chinese were not poor people. And they also had a considerable amount of connections. The Germans supplied a large number of tanks and things, tanks and armoured cars, stuff like that. The Russians, when they weren't at war with the Chinese, were more than happy to sell stuff to them. And even while they were at war with the Chinese, they often sell stuff to them. The Chinese are pretty open-minded when it comes to warfare.
Could be bombs we could use against our country. Yes, as a matter of fact, we've got some spare in the factory right now.
Yeah, so we'll sell you these aircraft and then we'll shoot them down next week. Yeah, that's pretty fun. So the Russians supplied a lot of equipment. They also supplied pilots for the war against Japan. So a lot of the Chinese pilots were actually Russian pilots. Most of the Chinese pilots went to Russia to train. I believe some went to America as well to train. However, when Germany and Russia signed their military alliance, which helped them to invade Poland, the Russians withdrew their fighters from China because technically Russia was now allied to Japan, and it would be a bit embarrassing. It's not like modern days where you can be allied to someone and bomb them at the same time. Back in those days you kind of had to be a little bit more honest. So that's basically all we have with the Chinese so far.
We rebased them, giving them new shiny equipment.
Basically rebasing them, making them look more
Chinese.
More Chinese, and making them look more into what we are going to be doing with our game, with our bolt action game. This is the first platoon or squad for the Chinese. I'm working on the others. Keep a lookout. There will be more videos to come. I hope this has been useful if you're planning the Chinese yourself. You don't have to do them like this. There's all sorts of Chinese you can do. You can do the communist forces who were a sort of bluey colour. If you look it up on the net, you're going to find loads of pictures. There's quite a lot of these really good Chinese films where they all wear the correct equipment, well, more or less correct equipment. The new ones.
They're not English.
No, they're not in English, which is interesting. Why would they make them in English? Because, they speak Chinese. But yeah, there are quite a few. Flowers of War is a brilliant film if you want to watch it. If you're younger, don't watch it.
No, I'm allowed to.
No, he's not allowed to watch it. No, it's a very good film.
No.
For uniforms and stuff, and even tactics, it's a great war film. It's a real war film. Unfortunately, it's not really suitable for the younger viewers.
I don't think there really is any younger viewers watching the channel.
No, I mean, if someone says, "Hey, I'm going to put Flowers of War on," and their kid sat next to me and says, "Hey, this is a cool film about Chinese fighting Japanese," it'll work out. But by all means, look up YouTube. You will see some battle clips from it, so it might give you an idea of what goes on. There's a really good tank fighting scene, which is quite interesting. But that's it. That is my Chinese forces so far. You already know what I've got for the Chinese, because you've seen them in battle. But these are the upgraded versions, which you will be seeing a lot more of. We're going to be a lot more China-centric in our bolt action games in future, and we're going to hopefully get into Winter War as well. So we're going to have Finns, which will be fun. You can't trust the Finns, said a certain Russian diplomat to a certain German diplomat. I wonder why he said that. So here we have the Chinese. Should be more interesting things to come. But Chinese infantry, awesome. Anything to add?
No, I'm not pretty much anything about you talked about on it.
Oh yeah, last but not least, I should mention that the early war blitzkrieging Germans have the gas mask canister and the gas mask bags. That's very useful for the Chinese because they actually used gas in warfare. It was the only part of the Second World War where gas was actually used. So it's quite handy actually having them on and not using them for spare bits. They're quite useful to have them put up. The Japanese as well also have gas masks. They have some Japanese with gas masks, which is cool. So there you go. There you have it. That's the end of this video finally, and over to you.
If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and comment down below what you think of these figures and what do you think we did wrong on these figures.
I don't think we did anything wrong on these figures, thank you very much.
It's their opinion.
Okay.
And that's everything from me, and you already said that's everything from him, so that's bye from me.
Good day then.